Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or it's 2 a.m. good better. This is Eagle Eyes on Tech. I am Eagle Falcon, and I hope you've all had a very Merry Christmas. Or Hanukkah. Or Kwanzaa. God, dang it. I know there's a fourth one, and I keep forgetting it. Oh, dang it. That's gonna drive me nuts. And it just hit me when I was quickly rushing through my job on Thursday. And it was just it's that. And I gotta remember that and apologize for that the next time I do this. And god dang it slipped my mind again. Oh. The worst part is I know it's a Muslim holiday too. God dang it. Ah, man. Oh, well. That's not important. I've now just wasted, a minute talking about nothing. Anyway, this is the last show for the year, and for whatever reason, I thought I had 2 more this year, and I just can't tell time, apparently, or look at a calendar, or just quickly look up what holidays happen in December on Google. Frickin' all the computer knowledge in the world, and I can't seem to accomplish simple tasks. So anyway, this has to be the prediction show, just on the grounds of it's the last episode of the year. Next week, we'll start looking into and start researching if there's any leaks for CES. So, let's get started. We'll start off with Windows and Android. So a lot of interesting stuff happened for Windows over the last year, but there's going to be a lot more interesting things. For starters, I'm willing to bet that the regular Surface, just the Microsoft Surface, not the Surface Pro, not the Surface Book, but just the regular Surface, not only will still exist, but it's just going to get minor updates like the magnetic stylus that the current generation has, and a slight price drop. They want to try and get that into as many people's hands as possible while still keeping it x86. So, right off the bat, I think Microsoft's just going to keep trying to make changes like that to just try and get as many of these Surface products out there. Because unfortunately, a lot of the third-party manufacturers like Dell, HP, Lenovo, and all of them are they're not really getting anything out there that really takes full advantage of Windows 10. Now, if they do this, the Microsoft Surface needs to have 4 gigs of RAM. I can't stress that enough. Now, the Surface Pro, on the other hand, I think it's not going to take many steps to try and get the price down. It's just going to keep marketing itself as a Pro product and something that's really going to be targeted at power users. But it is probably going to shave some of its massive bezel. It has a lot of bezel on that tablet, if you've ever seen it. I think that bezel's going to get cut either by 25% or even 50%. Some of that bulk needs to come off. And I think Microsoft knows that too, and they're going to go for it. This does mean a slightly smaller keyboard, but the keyboard on the Pro, it has some space to give and not really suffer from it. Now, the Surface Book, on the other hand, I think that they're going to be unapologetic with. I think they're going to continue to really beef that sucker up. I think it's going to be marketed more towards the Pro users and the power users than it even is right now. I mean, right now it's just it's the Surface Book. Yeah, okay. They're going to pump it out as saying this has power in it. We're probably going to see quad-core processors hit it. We're probably going to see more GPU options. Right now it has a GTX 940M in it. We're probably going to see a GTX 950M in it. Maybe even a 960M, but I doubt on the 960. But it's possible. I mean, if you had to put a gun to my head and say what are the GPUs going to have, it's going to have probably the 1040 or the 1050M as its two options. And I say the 1040 and the 1050M assuming that NVIDIA is going to continue with new graphic cards and call them, the 10 series. In fact, I'll just get it right now. I don't even have it in my notes right now, but NVIDIA is going to launch the 10XX series, which would just be more Maxwell-based processors and just kind of a refinement of what the 900 series is. No new architectures or anything like that. Now then, moving on to Dell. Dell I don't see making any moves. I really don't. I think they're just going to kind of play it safe. They just did a redesign on their precision laptops, and they clearly don't show any signs of trying to make it go, wow, that's a Dell, like they did when they first came out with the M6400. That Pro laptop really stood out. It was bold. It was eye-catching. In fact, I would argue it actually looked better than the MacBook Pros at the time. But now it's just, yeah, it's there. Whatever. The end. I mean, just with that, they also just redesigned the Optiplex line. The Precision line might see some redesigning, but I doubt it. They just put a lot of work into what they have currently, and they normally don't really do a redesign unless the processor is just stupid powerful and they need to rethink the thermal solution. And Intel doesn't show any signs of making a super hot processor. So that's all going to stay the same. As far as their consumer line, there might be some redesigns coming down the pike. Might be. CES will really show it. I don't see enough evidence to make a bold prediction on it. But I'd say, yeah, there's probably going to be some modifications in the Inspiron line and the XPS line and etc., etc. Especially the XPS all-in-ones. The fact that they've launched new versions with Skylake and everything else except the XPSs, that tells me that there definitely is something they're going to show at CES. And unfortunately, there's no rumors out there, there's no clues out there, so it would be such a shot in the dark as to what they're doing. It wouldn't even be funny. HP, on the other hand, while Dell is playing it kind of safe, HP, I think, is going to be one to take a very close look at. They haven't been making any moves with Skylake yet, except for like maybe 3 products. So they've got a lot in the pike. And the fact that almost all of their computers look really, really bland, yeah, they're going to be making some bold moves, especially since they're usually ones in the PC world that people know for style. And also kind of making the Apple moves of being, it looks great but functions poorly. So HP is going to be one to keep a very close eye on. In addition, I am willing to say that HP is going to try and do something stupid and try to make a super compact workstation very similar to the Mac Pro Black Cylinder. I'm not saying it is going to be a Black Cylinder. It might be more like a cubish tower, but they're going to try and do something like that, I think. But anyway, moving on to AMD. They've been working for a long time on what's called Project Zen. Project Zen is a brand new architecture from the ground up. And I'm going to say it's due to launch this next year. I think like in the middle of the year. It keeps getting pushed back. I think it is finally going to launch. But I don't think it's going to catch Intel. It's going to bring them very close. It's finally going to make them noticeable again. And it finally might make them an actual thought in the x86 world. So we'll start seeing desktops and laptops again running AMD processors and not being laughed at. Like right now, if you show me an AMD laptop, I will laugh at you for having an AMD laptop. They're terrible. They are slow, they're pitiful, and my phone does better than them. So we're going to see something out of AMD there on the CPU side. In addition, on the GPU side, their new GPUs. They've got their this last generation, if you don't know, they launched the 300 series, and they made no upgrades. They tweaked the clock speed a little bit. They added like a shader core here or there. They basically did nothing. There is almost no difference between a 390 and a 290, for example. But they did launch the R9 Fury, the R9 Fury X, and the R9 Fury Nano. These Fury cards all use a newer architecture that use a new style of RAM. This is already behind what NVIDIA has, but it's a step forward. This next year, they're going to tweak that a bit and have the entire 400 line that's going to come out next year. Everything's going to run that architecture. Everything. No, I shouldn't say everything. Because AMD has this nasty habit of down in like the X40s or the X50s, the really low-end cards, using last year's architecture. And, I hope they don't. But let's be honest, they're going to. But anyway, they're gonna... The 400 series is gonna all be that architecture. And the whole Fury X, and Fury Nano nonsense is gonna be gone. Just no longer exists. Never gonna be acknowledged again. But I think they will make nano variations of some of the cards. Like you'll see a R9 480, an R9 480X, and an R9 480 Nano. The Nano being the intentionally compact card that's going to fit in small computers. I can see them doing a few Nano variations like that. And whether it's AMD directly, or I can also see companies like MSI or Asus doing that as well without AMD's involvement. So AMD is going to be something to keep an eye on, and if they don't score a slam dunk with this sort of stuff, they're going to be in serious trouble. Even more so than they are already. And as much as... I'm an Intel fan, and I'm an NVIDIA fan, but AMD needs to stay alive. They need to exist to push Intel and NVIDIA to make better products. So moving on, we have Windows Phone. Oh, Windows Phone. There are some little cute things within Windows Phone currently. Like, you can connect a cable you can wirelessly connect a keyboard, mouse, and a monitor to a Windows Phone, and it'll show a Windows desktop environment, basically turning like a TV into a desktop for you. It's kind of cool. Like, say if I was on the go, and then I got back to my office, and all I had was my Windows Phone on me, I could connect to anything, whether it be in the office or at home or whatever, and just have a desktop with me that's all powered by the little phone in my pocket. It's cool. But in the consumer market, it's not very useful, unfortunately. Which is why I think Windows Phone is going to more focus on its security, its business applications, and focus on the void that BlackBerry left by... BlackBerry moved to Android. And therefore, there's this hole of, like, the super secure operating system on phones. BlackBerry has a few things, but just being on Android alone leaves it vulnerable to all sorts of problems. I think Windows Phone is going to focus on those holes and just try and fill that void, while still also trying to focus on being consumer, but the consumer attempts are going to fail. It's just not ready yet to be a consumer product. So that's it for the Windows predictions I have for now. Lenovo is just too much of a wild card to guess. Other than there'll be new ThinkPads, they'll be black, and they'll have a red dot in the keyboard. I don't know what else you want out of them. That's pretty much all Lenovo does. It's very hard to predict what Lenovo will do because they're just so out there half the time. And I just don't feel comfortable making a prediction and then just going, oh, look how wrong you were. And it's like, yeah. Yeah. So let's move on to Android. First off, Samsung. Their flagship... Samsung makes a tons of phones. Just like 18 quadrillion every year. And I'm not talking about total phones. I'm talking about just the models. There's of course the flagships, which is going to be the S7 and the Note 7, and probably a plus version of the S7 Edge. There'll be an Edge variant of the S7. Those flagship ones. And then there's like the Samsung Twist or whatever. It's just like the Samsung noun number. You could make like a little Mad Lib game of just like Samsung noun or Samsung verb or adjective Samsung noun. It's crazy the amount of phones that Samsung just pushes out like it's nobody's business just to see what sticks. And the main reason they do it is just see, oh look, this little variant here is really popular. I think we'll start putting that into the main line. But their main lines, I'm talking just the Galaxy line, they're going to focus on introducing a 3D touch-like screen, meaning that you can tap and it'll respond. You'll push harder and then it'll respond differently. You can push harder yet still and it'll respond even differently than the first two. It's what Apple just introduced in the iPhone 7. Samsung, there's already tons of rumors that Samsung is working on this. But one I don't see a lot of rumors on, but a lot of reports I'm seeing kind of hint that this is coming, that there's going to be a return of the micro SD slot on the Samsung phones. The main reason being is that Samsung also makes those memory cards, and they want to be able to tote that as an advantage they have over the iPhone again. This last version, they dropped it. They also dropped the removable battery. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of evidence that the removable battery is coming back. I just don't. On top of that, the prototypes I've seen, what few are out there, the design looks very similar to what's currently out there. I've seen a few that it looked like there were 2 slots. Now this could be dual SIMs, but one of them I think is the micro SD slot. So we'll see. We will see what Samsung has out there, but I'm just telling you, I got a good feeling there's going to be 3D touch and there's going to be a micro SD slot. In addition, let's move on to HTC, which might as well be the HP of the phone world. HTC, I think, is going to finally push out a large screen phone. I call them pro phones. Everyone else calls them phablets. And anyone who calls them phablets, I think, deserves a punch in the face because that is a dumb, dumb word. I'll punch myself now for that. Okay, there we go. So I think HTC will finally push out a pro phone, but it's going to be focused on entertainment. It's going to be just like a TV in your pocket sort of thing. It's going to have dual speakers on the front, which has pretty much been their trademark on all of their main Android phones. And that's going to be the push. Big screen, dual speakers in front, blasting the sound right at you, high quality speakers, and that's what I see HTC making a big move on next year. And it's going to help. And HTC really needs help. And then finally, let's move on to what's the new Android version. So we're on, what is it? The last one was Marshmallow, which means the dessert code name has to begin with N. Now, I forgot to actually write down this in the notes. I'll do it afterwards. I think they're going to do another Kit Kat and actually go for a licensed N product. I think they're going to... No. I was going to say Nutella, but that sounds dumb now that I think about it. Android Nutella. Ugh. God, if it actually turns out to be, people are going to look back and just like, oh my god, he was a genius and stopped himself. Oh god, an end dessert. Ugh. Well, while I think on that, the update is going to focus again on cleaning the gloat. There is a ton of bloat in Android, and they really need to try and make it run cleaner, run smoother, and run on less RAM. Right now, it takes a colossal 1.6 gigs of RAM to function, which unfortunately means that a lot of these Android devices that are running on 1 gig of RAM, bam, instant swap. In addition, I also see Android making a lot of pushes behind the scenes to get the manufacturers to put less bloatware into these phones. Oh man, I still gotta come up with a dessert name for N. I don't know, Nut Bar? Nah, I think they're just gonna go the Kit Kat route and go Nutella. That'd be gross, but... I mean, they did Kit Kat instead of Key Lime Pie. I mean, Key Lime Pie was a slam dunk, but nope, they went the marketing route. Yeah, I think Nutella. Oh, God, I hope I'm wrong on that one. I really do. Now, I'll be back. Coming up next, the Apple predictions. And I know a lot of you want the Apple predictions. Welcome back, Eagle Eyes on Tech. I'm Eagle Falcon. Don't worry, this is the last time we're going to have Christmas music. Just seriously deal with it, okay? It hasn't been that long. Alright, so on to the Apple predictions. Oh boy. I can't really think of anything software-wise, because clearly Apple has run out of ideas software-wise. In fact, they start showing that they're running out of ideas hardware-wise, too. I mean, look at that stupid battery case they launched. My God. I was literally talking with some family at the dinner table, and even, like, the little 12-year-old child at the table, when I described to her how it looked, because she had an iPhone 5C, and I said, it looks just like this, except there's like a perfect bulge, like a candy bar, on the top of it that doesn't cover the whole thing. She's like, that's stupid. Look, when the children in the room think your design is stupid, just, what more do I have to say? It looks so dumb. Oh, and that's how dumb it is. The moment I start thinking about it, I get distracted. Moving on. So let's start off with the Mac Mini. It's well overdue for an update. And the fact that there's a lot of PC competitors to the Mac Mini that have gotten slimmer, the fact that the interior of the Mac Mini no longer has a physical hard drive in it, it just has an M2 SSD in it, which is a lot smaller and a lot thinner. I don't see how the Mac Mini doesn't get smaller. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say they're going to embrace the Core M and it's going to become like a flash drive stick that plugs in to a Thunderbolt port or anything crazy like that. I was about to, and then I thought about it and it was just like, no, they're not going to do that. That just sounds really dumb. The Mac Mini, I think, is going to get slimmer, and I think it's going to resemble more of what the Apple TV was. It's going to be like a smaller puck. They're probably going to get it down to like 35 or 40 watts running. But it's still going to be an aluminum thing. It's still going to be a puck. And I think it's just really going to be slimmer because they still want all of the port space that they've got on there. I don't think they're going to sacrifice that. Now, the laptops, I think there's going to be a huge changeover. First off, the MacBook Pro is going to become slimmer yet. Unfortunately, I also think it's going to become less powerful, both the 13-inch version and the 15-inch version. I think they're still going to keep those screen sizes, but I think the bezels are going to become less. That it's going to be a smaller footprint overall. I don't think they're going to get as small as like Dell's Infinity screen on the XPS line, but I think they're going to be cut in half. On top of that, I think they're also going to avoid using like the most powerful mobile processors. I think the most you're going to see is a Core i5, maybe the low tier Core i7. But they're not going to use like Core i7 Black or anything like that. I think they're going to be trying to get these laptops under 100 watts as much as possible. This also might mean the end of the discrete graphic card in the MacBook Pro. Right now, you can only get a discrete graphic card if you go for the highest end one. I think that option is going to go entirely to make sure that they stay under the 100 watts. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say that the dedicated card is going to be gone entirely. They might let you have like an X40 from the Nvidia line, or they might move to the AMDs and like the low end R5s or R7s. But without a doubt, they want to get under 100 watts because I think the MagSafe adapter on this is going to die off too. Just like with the MacBook, where they wanted to charge using USB Type-C, USB Type-C is going to hit the MacBook Pro this upcoming year. And I think much like every other laptop that uses USB Type-C, there's going to be one on each side. There'll be two of them. In addition, there will still be your two Thunderbolt ports, your HDMI port, and your SD card slot, and your headphone jack. Those will all still be there. But it's going to be a little thinner, it's going to be a smaller footprint, and it's going to charge using USB Type-C. And like I said, they want to get under 100 watts just so it can use that USB Type-C. And just like the MacBook, it's going to be available in 3 colors. Space gray, silver, and gold. Because that's their bread and butter now. You know what? No, there's going to be a 4th color too. They're going to have rose gold too. Because why not? That's their 4 colors. That's what they're sticking with because people decided that's what they want. Seriously, I would have loved to have seen a metallic blue. Can you imagine that? Just like a sleek, shiny, like semi-deep blue. That look kind of cool. Yeah, well, probably not going to see that. Ooh, they could call it sapphire too. Ooh. Hey, Apple, if you're listening to me, do that. That actually sounds really, really cool. Just send me a check in the mail when you do that, though. I was giving a thumbs up at the end there. The MacBook is going to see a drastic price drop. There's just no reason why the MacBook is this high. It costs like $400 to make it, and they're selling it for $1,200. It's going to see a price drop. I don't see any reason it doesn't see a price drop. It makes no sense. I know it's an easy prediction, but it's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a second Type-C on here. A lot of people think there's going to be one. I don't. They're going to stick with one on this one. It's going to be the basic MacBook. However, the MacBook Air, I think, will bite the dust. It would be kind of cute to see MacBook Air at the middle, and then MacBook Pro at the top. But the MacBook is just... it's clearly taking the place of the Air. I think the Air is just going to bite the dust, and that's going to be it. The end. So, we'll give a moment of silence next year when that bites the dust. I'm pretty confident on that one. Some others aren't, but I don't know how you think that the Air is going to live through this. I think the MacBook's just going to drop down to where the MacBook Air is right now in price-wise, and the MacBook will just be the new MacBook Air. Now, it's quite possible that the MacBook will be renamed the MacBook Air, and then what was the MacBook Air will die. But I doubt it. Alright, let's move on to iPads. So the iPad Air, there's a lot of evidence that suggests it's coming in March. It's coming early, and in fact, there is a good chance that the iPad Air, that the new iPad Air, which would be what, the iPad Air 3, is going to be announced probably after CES, the more I think about it. A lot of rumors say it's going to be in March, but Apple always likes to announce something right after CES and steal CES's thunder. Which is why some people don't know CES exists. And I think that thunder-stealing moment's going to be the iPad Air 3. And I don't see a lot of things that are going to change on it. I think it's really just going to stick with, like, the A9 chip, so a little bump in speed. The iPencil, or the Apple Pencil, or whatever they're calling that horrendous stylus they have. Which, seriously, that thing is just terrible. Underline terrible. And the smart connector is going to be on there too. That's that magnetic connector that the iPad Pro uses. The iPad Mini is going to remain unchanged next year. The iPad Pro, I think there's going to be some changes to it. There's definitely going to be some changes coming down the pike for it. I don't know what specifically, but there's definitely something going to happen to it. So now moving on to the iPhone 7. If you know anything about iPhones, they go in what's called a tick-tock schedule. You start with a tick, which is a complete redesign, and then you move to a tock, which is refining. You've noticed this, whether you've known about TikTok or not. Last year, 2 years ago, the iPhone 6 came out. That was the tick, a complete redesign, and showing off that they had two sizes. a regular phone and then a Pro phone. And then they had the talk, which was the 6S, refining it, updating it, and tweaking it a bit, but keeping the design the same. So, we've already had the talk, now we move to the tick. So the iPhone 7 is going to be a redesign, it's going to look different. As far as the actual look, I have no earthly idea. It's still too early to even try to guess. But everyone is forced to guess with a gun to their head, so I guess I have to as well. I think it's going to be smaller. Not just thinner, but smaller. The actual face of it getting a little smaller. By eliminating some of the bezel around the screen. Mainly at the top and the bottom. There's going to be less wasted space there. Especially towards the top. Probably try and get that down to just the ear slit. And then just the 3 sensors, which is ambient light. Oh no, there's 2 ambient light. No, there's an ambient light, a proximity sensor, and the front-facing camera. Yeah, that's the 3. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you have a white iPhone, you notice this because there's a black bar where these are. If you have a black one, hold your phone up to a light, and you'll see there's like some off-colored dots near the earpiece. That's what those are. So in addition to the less bezel on the screen, there is a lot, underline a lot, of rumors saying that the headphone jack is going to be removed from the iPhone 7. Completely removed. So what does that mean? It means any headphones you got will not work. You're going to have to use either Bluetooth, a wireless set of headphones, or you are most likely going to have to buy a $30 adapter to convert your Lightning port to a 3.5mm jack. I hate this. I hope they don't do it. But it's Apple. They're going to do it. Let's be honest. It's an ancient jack, and they're just going to say, well, you can get the same audio quality of Bluetooth. And especially since they own Beats, which makes a ton of wireless headsets, they are totally going to do it. Don't even kid yourself into thinking that, oh no, they're not, they would never do that. They're going to do it. And the best part is that 90% of you listen to me are nodding your head going, yeah, they're going to do it. And all 90% of you hope that I am wrong and that you are wrong. And if we are wrong, then the 10% are going, see, I never doubted it. And secretly those 10%, well, actually those 10% are just dumb. Or don't know Apple that well. Probably the latter, really. Yeah, well, let's move on to kind of the weird, forgotten child of Apple. The Apple Cinema display. This is their monitor. A lot of you forget that they even sell a monitor. This thing hasn't been updated in years. This has been something I've kind of predicted here and there might become something, but it never does. I do think the Apple Cinema display is going to finally get an upgrade and a redesign this year. I think it's going to become thinner. It's going to look a lot like a thinner iMac, with coming to basically an edge around the display. I think it's still going to have the little squid of like USB Thunderbolt and the MagSafe. Except I think the MagSafe is going to be replaced with USB Type-C to push the change that is going on through all the laptops. In addition, I also think that there is going to be an HDMI option as well. I think the Apple TV... Well, here's what's going to happen. Either the Cine display is going to finally have an HDMI cable to connect the Apple TV to it, or the Apple TV is going to have a display port on it to connect it to the Cine display. And I think the Cine display will still come in either the 27-inch model or a larger, almost TV-sized size as well. In my notes, I just arbitrarily threw 40 inches out there, because at 40 inches, I could still someone claim to say, no, it's still a computer monitor at 40 inches and still be a small TV. So, yeah, sure, 40 inches. Why not? I have no faith that if they made a second bigger size, it would be 40 inches. But whatever. 40 inches, there. Just threw a number out there. Picked it out of the ocean of numbers and just threw it at the screen. There it is. Well, that's it for me for pretty much all predictions. But let me talk to you about what happened over this last week. I went and did some last-minute shopping on Monday. I had to actually quickly get I had a used iPad I picked up from an off-lease company. And, said, hey, everyone there, met a lot of familiar faces. And they helped me out, got me something for my stepmother. And then I went to the mall and got it coated in invisible shield. I was there for a couple hours, so I went and actually tried the I went and tried the iPad Pro and the Surface. I tried both styluses. For starters, the iPad Pro is very top heavy. No matter which way you hold it, it felt unbalanced. You never felt comfortable holding this thing. It was very cumbersome. Much like I can't remember who made it now, but someone made like a 15-inch tablet, and it just felt like, why? Why would you do this? You never felt comfortable holding this thing. It was too huge. The surfaces still managed to balance themselves right, so it didn't feel too awkward. The iPad Pro they had on display definitely felt awkward. On top of that, the keyboard case they had, you unfold the whole thing, it was like you just unfolded an origami swan. Like, oh my god, what have I done? Like, ugh, how do I put this back together? You don't know. It was just terrible. And then you finally figure this thing out, and it's just like, oh goody, it has to be at this angle and this angle only. Now granted, the keyboard on that case, I was shocked by it. There was actually some great tactile feedback in that keyboard. You pretty much felt it click a little bit every single time you hit a key. And it wasn't like... I don't know if there was a haptic engine in there or not. If there was, great illusion. But this just makes me wonder, why is it the keyboard in the MacBook is so mind-blowingly terrible, but the keyboard on this stupid little felt case actually felt decent to type on? It just blew me away. Now granted, I wouldn't want to type an essay on that keyboard case. No, it just didn't. It felt good, but it didn't feel right. Maybe I could have gotten used to it, but I don't know. I felt a little iffy on it. The thing that blew me away, though, was that stylus. Oh God, that pencil. There was a second delay. A whole second. They advertise the thing as it's smooth as butter. It's like you're actually using an ink pen. Instantaneous. You can tell there's a lag. from when you stroke with the pen and when it appears on the screen. Oh. And as someone who's just like quickly signing and you've done it a million times, it's nothing. If you're drawing, if you're doing something unfamiliar to yourself or anything like that, it throws you off. Ugh. So I went down to the Surface booth and tried the Surface Pen, just compared the two. The Surface Pen was a lot quicker. It was basically instantaneous. I think there might have been like a fractional second delay when I just did like the quick stroke to see how quickly it appeared. But it was much better. I would have much rather have drawn with the Surface than I would the iPad Pro. I just don't know what the heck Apple was thinking with this stylus. It's just terrible. And on top of that, having the charger built into it so that when you're charging on your... Oh, God. Now, on the bright side, though, when you do charge the stylus, it does automatically sync or automatically connect via Bluetooth to the tablet, which is most likely where the lag comes in. There is a lag with Bluetooth. So I thought that was kind of neat, because when they had the display out, the stylus didn't work at all. And I thought, oh boy, the stylus died. So I connected it to the base of it, and it was just right away. It said the stylus has now been connected via Bluetooth, and it's like, oh, so that's all it was. And yeah, sure enough, that's all it was. So that part of it I did like. I don't know how the Surface stylus works. I'm not sure if it's like a Wacom-like interface or Wacom or whatever. But anyway, that was really interesting. And then, of course, the guy who was coding my iPad was, of course, an Apple fanboy, and him and I argued a little bit about what Apple's doing. And I gotta say that Apple is really, really slacking off, and they really need to pick up the ball. And I really wish the MacBook Pro would go back to the powerful yet slick laptop that it was in the past, but I just don't see it happening. And that's really, really sad. Alright, so enough of that. Last segment, just kind of wrap things up, and I want to talk about a prediction that was made by some major, major car outlets. You want to stick around for this. Alright, last segment of 2015. There was an article put out by several different outlets regarding the autonomous vehicle. I'm going to focus on one that stated that the autonomous vehicle would completely rewrite how we look at cars. That no one in America would own their cars anymore. That they would borrow them for one trip through an app, and that then they'd go back to a home base somewhere. This would never happen in America. Now, granted, they base this on the fact that people in my generation, the millennial generation, don't own cars and don't show that much interest in cars. Granted, there are some people who do feel this way, but the overwhelming reason that millennials, people my age, don't want to own a car is because they can't afford it. A large number of them are still living in their parents' basement. I've only been living in my own place for 1.5 years now. It took me a while to actually find a good paying job out there. Especially one that actually had the hours that I wanted. And now I do this, which I think so far I've made a grand total of 47 cents. Seriously, this gets me like nothing. This is clearly a hobby. But that's just it. This whole thing reeks of like some New Yorkian pipe dream. Like this guy only looks at how people in New York behave. Nobody in New York wants to own their own car. It's a hindrance. You gotta pay for parking. There's a lack of parking anywhere. It's much easier to take the subway or take the taxi. It makes no sense to own a car there. In a lot of these big cities, it doesn't make sense to own a car. Here in Milwaukee, you can get away with it. There's still plenty of parking. There's still plenty of parking structures around. There's not a overwhelming, dense packing like there is in a big city like New York or Chicago. This literally just reeks to me of just, this is what this guy wants to happen. Like he has some sort of political desire for only some megacorp to just rent out cars like Tesla. There are still just too many people out there who want their own car. I love my junker. I would not give that up until it died. And even then, I would still want to own my own car. I know plenty of people my age who want their car. I know someone who doesn't like cars at all, but he still has one on the grounds that he feels that he needs the mobility. And the notion that this would be a first, that we'd have the ability to just lease out cars for one trip, it's not a first. We already have this system. They're called taxis. Now, this being said, the autonomous car is going to change a few things. It is the fact that I use my car maybe twice a day at most. Well, I shouldn't say that. I probably use my car maybe a grand total of most days 30 minutes. On a heavy day, probably 2 or 3 hours. But as far as waking hours, that still leaves like what? 14, 15, 16 hours it could be used, but isn't. So if it was autonomous, I could rent it out. And I do think that is what is more likely. Renting out the car. Using an app of some sort so that my car could exit from the driveway, go pick up someone, drive them somewhere, and then return home to me. And honestly, if I was to pin down what app would do it, I would say it's Uber. And it's not because I lack originality, it's because they are already looking into it. Uber is looking into Tesla a lot. There are a lot of rumors flying around from inside of Uber that they're looking at self-driving cars and having their own fleet of self-driving cars. I can totally see them not only offering a few of their owns, just because of this pipe dream has now been put out there, but also putting out for people who have autonomous cars to rent them out from our X to Z or whatever. Now, this isn't coming anytime soon. There is a lot of hype over autonomous vehicles right now, and they are getting closer and closer to being a reality. But government has a long way to go before anything like this is even possible. They are going to want to regulate the living crap out of this. They are going to want to, first off, put in a lot of regulations so that even if it's autonomous, you have to be there in order for it to drive autonomously. I couldn't just push a button on my watch and have it drive to me from somewhere. they would ban that. First off, they would say, like, right now, there are some autonomous vehicles on the road being tested. That's no secret. There is also an autonomous semi-truck currently on the road in active use. One of the regulations that's put on that truck right now is that you still need a CDL Class A certified driver behind the wheel of that truck, despite the fact that it can drive on the highways by itself. I'd still say this whole thing of possibly being able to rent out your self-driving car via Uber or Lyft or a whole new app is probably still, I would say, 10 years out. I think autonomous driving will be around in 2 or 3 years, available to the public, but it's going to be regulated so heavily because there are going to be so many nanny politicians wanting to say that no, there has to be a capable driver behind the wheel. And that's kind of sad, because these companies are so paranoid about a lawsuit, they are already making sure that that system is 100% flawless before it's available. Like, I know a few people who would benefit heavily from having an autonomous vehicle. There's one gal I know that she physically cannot drive because she's always at risk of becoming dizzy or passing out. Because of this, she could never own a license, and she constantly has to take the bus. An autonomous vehicle like that, she wouldn't have to worry about walking a mile after getting off the bus, or having to shell out for a taxi. She could just drive there, just put in the GPS and go take a nap. On top of this, a self-driving car would cut down on drunk driving incidents. Lord knows, here in Milwaukee, we could use less of those. But as far as nobody ever owning a vehicle again, I don't see that happening in my lifetime. There's no way. There is still far too much pride in American culture to just give up the ownership of a car. It's too personal. It just simply is. For us to just say we'd give it up? No. I could see that happening in England or France. Those are the first two that come to mind in my head. I could see it helping Russia a lot. Good lord, have you ever seen Russian dash cams? Ugh. It's like a nightmare. But that's pretty much it for me. And that's it for the year. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at eaglefalcontech@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. This podcast is still very young. We still have a lot of room to grow. And who knows? Maybe this will become more than just a hobby of some fat guy who knows a lot about tech. Anyway, take care everyone, and rest well. We'll see you next year.